They say some wishes are innocent until they aren't. I used to believe that. What harm can a wish do, right? Just a quiet thought. A harmless hope. But some wishes don't float away. Some stick. They settle in your chest like a weight, and they wait. My nephew made a wish on his birthday. And that wish, simple as it sounded, changed everything. I wish I had laughed it off. I wish I had looked away. I wish I hadn't felt that pause in my chest when he looked at me and said it. I wish I had someone who really gets me. Someone who knows how to love. Everyone else laughed. I didn't. I couldn't. Because deep down, I knew that wish wasn't about any girl from school. He looked right at me. And in that second, everything I thought I knew about love, family, and boundaries started to crack. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Just a moment. Just my imagination. But something inside me stirred. It had been so long since anyone saw me. Not just looked, saw. He did. And I don't know what's worse. That he saw me, or that I let him. If only I had said no. But I didn't. And this is the story of what happened because of that. Subscribe now to Heartfelt Tales Unfold to dive into true stories that unravel the complexities of the human heart. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. I never thought Leo's birthday wish would be the moment that shattered everything. But maybe it had started long before that. I'm 38. No kids. No job. No spark left in my marriage. I used to be full of life. I really did. I had dreams, ambition, laughter that used to fill a room. But life has a way of wearing you down. Little by little, until one day, you look in the mirror and barely recognize who's looking back. Marcus, my husband, he's not a bad man. He works hard. Pays the bills. He's polite. But he's not present. He's there, but never with me. Not really. We sleep in the same bed, but it feels like we live in different worlds. He used to touch me like I mattered. Now, it's like he doesn't even see me. There's no fighting. No passion. Just silence. We drifted. Quietly, slowly, like a boat losing its anchor. And when I lost my job last fall, I thought maybe it would bring us closer. But it only made things worse. He buried himself deeper into work. Long hours. Late meetings. The occasional excuse that didn't quite add up. I didn't have the energy to ask questions. I was too busy pretending not to care. Then came summer. And with it, Diana, my younger sister, came to stay for a while. She's everything I'm not. Energetic. Playful. Bright-eyed. She's the kind of person who walks into a room and fills it with noise and life. And she brought Leo with her. 19. Tall, athletic, soft-spoken. He's always been sweet. Always respectful. Ever since he was little, he'd follow me around, asking questions, wanting to help. He called me his cool aunt. I used to see him as a child. But this time, he wasn't a child anymore. He walked into our house and brought with him a kind of energy I didn't realize I'd been missing. Not just youth, but presence. Curiosity. Warmth. He'd smile when he saw me. Ask me how I was. Wait for the answer. It's strange, the things that stay with you. A hand brushing yours when passing a dish. A compliment that lingers a little longer than it should. The way his eyes didn't just look at me, but into me. I noticed. And then I hated myself for noticing. But the truth? I hadn't felt that alive in years. And every time Marcus ignored me, every time he turned his back in bed, every time he nodded absently when I spoke, Leo was there. And I hated how much I began to need that. We all sat around the table that night, Leo's birthday. The grill was going. The sun was setting. Diana was laughing about something. And then Leo made that wish. It was almost nothing. A joke. A throwaway line. I wish I had someone real. Someone who actually gets me. Someone who knows how to love. Everyone chuckled. But I looked up. And he was already looking at me. He didn't blink. Didn't smile. Just held my gaze like he was trying to say something without words. I looked away. But something inside me shifted. I tried to ignore it. Told myself I was imagining things. But that night I laid in bed, next to my husband, and all I could feel was the silence. Leo was just down the hall. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the adult in the house. I felt like the stranger. I told myself it was nothing, but something had been set in motion. A line had been drawn, so faint I could pretend it wasn't there. But it was. And I would cross it. I never thought Leo's birthday wish would be the moment that shattered everything. But it was. It was just a joke, right? That's what I told myself. But the truth is, it didn't feel like a joke. Not in that moment. Not the way he said it. And especially not the way he looked at me after. We were sitting outside. Family, food, candles flickering in glass jars. It was warm, that slow summer heat that makes everything feel lazy and close. The air smelled like grilled corn and lemon zest. Diana was refilling drinks. Marcus was scrolling on his phone like he always does. And then, out of nowhere, Leo just said it. I wish I had someone who really understood me, someone mature, who could teach me about life and love. There was laughter, of course. Diana threw a napkin at him. Marcus didn't even glance up. I forced a smile, tried to play along. But inside, I felt something stir. Something I wasn't ready for. He didn't laugh with the rest of them. Didn't backtrack or make a face. He just held my eyes for a second too long. Later that night, when things were winding down, I was rinsing plates in the kitchen. The light above the sink was dim, and the house had that stillness you only feel when a gathering ends and the night sets in. I didn't hear him come in, but I felt him there. He stood quietly, watching me, then walked over, handed me a glass from the table. And softly, barely above a whisper, he said, I meant that, you know. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My hands were wet, shaking slightly under the running water. I kept my eyes on the sink, pretending I hadn't heard. But my heart, it heard him. Loud and clear. He didn't push. Didn't say anything else. He just stood there for a moment. Then walked out. I stood in that kitchen for what felt like forever, trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. It was a joke. It had to be. He's a teenager. I'm his aunt. But then the days started feeling different. He started hanging around me more. Asking questions. Little things, what books I read, what I thought about certain movies, whether I believed in soulmates. It wasn't small talk. It was intentional. He started complimenting me in ways that caught me off guard. Your eyes always look tired, but they're still beautiful. Most people talk to be heard. You talk to understand. I wish more women were like you. And every time he said something like that, I felt myself slipping. At first, I brushed it off. I told myself he was just being sweet, that I was just reading too much into it. But there was a night, Marcus had fallen asleep on the couch again. Diana was out with friends. Leo and I ended up watching some old movie on the patio. He sat closer than he needed to. Our shoulders brushed. He leaned in at one point to tell me something funny, and I caught myself looking at his mouth. Just for a second. But I looked. And worse. I didn't look away right away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I laid in bed next to my husband, watching the ceiling fan spin in slow circles. I told myself I was imagining it. That I was lonely. That I missed being wanted. That my mind was playing tricks. But then came the night in the kitchen. And after that, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. It was just a joke, right? That's what I told myself. Until that night in the kitchen. What is wrong with me? I must have asked myself that 100 times. Every morning I woke up, I felt it. That dull ache in my chest. Not guilt yet, but something close. A kind of confusion that lingered just under the surface. I started paying attention to things I never used to notice. Like the way Leo's eyes would light up when I laughed. Or how he always found a reason to be near me, handing me something, brushing past me in the hallway, holding my gaze just a second longer than anyone else stared. And God help me. I started craving it. It felt wrong. It was wrong. But it also felt like something I hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. I looked in the mirror one morning and didn't recognize who I was becoming. But then I looked a little longer. I noticed how I'd started brushing my hair a bit differently. Wearing the dress that clung just enough to remind me of the body I once loved. Putting on lipstick. Even if it was just to stay home. Not for Marcus. He wouldn't notice if I walked in wearing a wedding dress or a garbage bag. But Leo noticed. And I started to live for that look in his eyes. That tiny flicker, like I was something worth seeing. He's an adult now, I told myself. 19. Almost 20. Legally, there was no line. But morally, emotionally. God. I knew better. But I also knew what it felt like to be touched by someone's attention. To be wanted. And I didn't realize how long I'd gone without it until I started to feel it again. Every time Marcus walked past me like I wasn't there. Leo asked me how I slept. How I was really doing. If I was happy. And those weren't just words. He meant them. It's a dangerous thing to be seen when you've lived in the shadows for so long. I started avoiding my husband without even realizing it. I'd go to bed early, pretend to be asleep before he came in. I stopped asking him to talk. To try. And he didn't notice. Or maybe he did. And didn't care. Which somehow made it worse. So I turned more and more toward Leo. Because every glance, every laugh, every small gesture between us started to feel like oxygen. Like I could breathe again. I hated myself for it. But I kept coming back for more. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw fading lines. But in Leo's eyes, I saw someone radiant. Beautiful. Desirable. Alive. And then one night, after everyone had gone to bed, he knocked on my bedroom door. That knock on my bedroom door. It was soft. Hesitant. But it felt louder than anything I'd heard in weeks. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My heart was thudding so loudly I was sure he could hear it through the door. I held my breath until I heard his footsteps retreat, slow and unsure. And even though nothing happened that night, everything had already changed. After that, the nights started to stretch. Leo would linger after everyone went to bed, pretending to scroll on his phone while I folded laundry or cleaned up the kitchen. He'd talk to me about everything: school, his childhood, how confusing love had become in today's world. And I'd listen. God, I listened like his words were water and I'd been thirsty for years. Sometimes we'd end up on the couch, side by side. Close. Too close. Our conversations became our secret little world. He'd brush my hand when passing a drink. Let his fingers rest just a second too long when handing me the remote. Once, our knees touched and neither of us moved. Not for a full minute. It felt like fire. Not in a dramatic movie scene way, but in that slow-burning kind of way that creeps up your spine and sits in your stomach. And still, nothing happened. Not yet. Then came that night in the living room. The lights were dim. A movie played quietly in the background, something forgettable, something we'd both pretended to care about. I must have fallen asleep. And when I woke up, he was watching me. Not just looking, watching. With this soft, aching intensity that made my breath catch. I asked, barely above a whisper, what? And he leaned in, like it was the most natural thing in the world, and said, "You're beautiful." I didn't speak. I didn't move. Then he added, "I've always wished you were mine." It was like the floor dropped out from under me. I sat up, heart racing, trying to find the words. Anything. But all I could think was, how long had he been feeling this? How long had I been letting him? I told him to go to bed. My voice was firm. Cold. It was the right thing to do. And he did. He didn't argue. Just nodded and walked away. But I didn't sleep that night. Because the image of him standing there, so open, so certain, it haunted me. It tempted me. I wanted to forget it. But I couldn't. And the worst part? I started to fantasize. I imagined what it would be like if I had met him at a different time. If I weren't married. If he weren't my nephew by blood. I started replaying our conversations in my head. His compliments. His eyes. His laugh. And I started noticing the way I moved around him. How I tucked my hair behind my ear when he looked at me. How I chose tops that fit a little better, smelled like my favorite perfume. How I leaned in, just slightly, when he spoke. I told myself I was imagining things. That he was just being sweet. That I was too starved for attention to think clearly. But I wasn't imagining it. Not anymore. The space between us was shrinking. Little by little. Day by day. And still, no one noticed. Diana was busy. Marcus was oblivious. And in that bubble, it was just us. Our own quiet little world. I told myself I could stop at any time. That I was in control. Until I wasn't. That night, I can still remember every detail. The air, the light, the silence before the storm. It was the kind of evening that felt like a movie, too perfect, too eerie, like something was about to happen, even if you didn't know what. Diana had gone out of town for the weekend. A work trip. Just 2 nights. She'd kissed Leo on the cheek, tossed me a casual, "Thanks for keeping an eye on him," and left like it was nothing. Like it was normal. Marcus was at some work conference. He barely even told me he was going. Just left a note on the counter and disappeared for 3 days. And just like that, it was only me and Leo. In the house. Alone. It had been raining since morning. By evening, the skies had cracked open completely. Thunder rolled low and steady, like a warning whispered under breath. We stayed in. He made popcorn. I opened a bottle of wine, just 1 glass, I told myself. Just to relax. We put on a movie we'd both seen a dozen times. Something safe. Familiar. But nothing about that night felt safe. The movie was halfway through when the power went out. Just like that, total blackness. A beat of silence, then I heard him say, "I'll grab some candles." And he did. He lit 3, small ones from the kitchen drawer. The flickering glow softened everything. The room felt smaller, warmer, more intimate. He sat closer. Our knees touched again. I didn't move. The sound of rain hitting the windows filled the silence. And then he spoke. He started talking about loneliness. About how hard it is to feel invisible, even when you're surrounded by people. How fake everything felt, school, dating, conversations with girls his age. He said no one really listens anymore. And I understood. God, I understood. I told him I felt the same. That some days I felt like a ghost walking through my own life. He looked at me and said, "You deserve more than that. You always have." It was quiet. The kind of quiet that hangs in the air and dares you to break it. He leaned in. And I didn't stop him. I should have. I know that. I should have stood up, walked away, said something, anything. But I didn't. I let him kiss me. And when he touched my face, when his hand moved to the back of my neck and pulled me just a little closer, I felt it. That ache I'd buried for so long cracked open like floodgates. It wasn't supposed to happen. I wasn't supposed to feel alive again. But I did. And in those moments, God forgive me, I didn't feel like a wife. Or an aunt. Or someone who should know better. I felt wanted. Seen. Loved. And when he touched me, I forgot everything. My marriage. My sister. Every reason I had to stop this before it started. All I knew was that I hadn't felt that kind of closeness in years. And I didn't want it to end. That night changed everything. And I wish I could say it ended there. But it didn't. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold so you won't miss the twists that come next. The morning after, it was different. He smiled at me like nothing had changed. Like the world hadn't shifted beneath our feet. But I couldn't smile back. Not fully. Not the way he wanted me to. Something about the daylight made everything feel heavier. Real. Wrong. And yet, when he reached out to squeeze my hand as he passed me the coffee, I didn't pull away. That was the beginning of the fallout. It didn't happen all at once. It crept in quiet and slow, like a fog you don't notice until you're choking on it. Leo started texting me constantly. Little things at first, "Good morning," smiley face, "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you." I'd stare at my phone, heart pounding. Sometimes I'd answer. Other times, I'd delete the messages before I even opened them. But no matter what I did, the guilt was there, gnawing at me, living under my skin. And then Diana came home. The first thing she said when she walked through the door was, "Something feels off in here." I laughed too quickly. Told her it was just the weather. But she looked at me, really looked. The way sisters do when they know something isn't quite right. Leo played it cool. Maybe too cool. He kept the same tone, the same smile, but there was something in his eyes, like he was waiting for something from me. Some sign. Some next step. But I didn't know what to give him. Marcus came back that same night. He gave me a tired kiss on the forehead, sat down at the dinner table, and barely spoke. But then, halfway through his meal, he looked up at me and said, "You've been distant lately. You okay?" I froze. Because it wasn't the words, it was the way he said them. He wasn't jealous. He wasn't angry. He sounded small. Insecure. Like a man who knew something had shifted but couldn't put his finger on what. I told him I was tired. Blamed the weather. Same lie. And that's when I really started to pull away. I stopped going to family dinners. Stopped sitting in the living room when everyone was gathered. Started hiding in the kitchen more. Washing dishes that didn't need washing. Avoiding conversations. Avoiding eye contact. Avoiding myself. Because everything had changed. And every time I looked at Diana, I felt like I had a brick sitting on my chest. She'd talk about Leo's future, his dreams, his college plans, and I'd nod, smile, say all the right things, while every word stabbed me from the inside. I watched him from across the room, noticed how he looked at me when no one else was watching. And sometimes I'd look back. But the space between us was filled with silence now. A heavy, unbearable silence that neither of us knew how to fix. And just when I thought things had settled, when I thought I could maybe let this die quietly without unraveling everything, Diana came into the kitchen one morning, coffee in hand, and said, "Hey, Leo's got a college tour next weekend. I can't go with him. Would you mind taking him instead?" I looked at her, and all I could think was, then Diana asked me to chaperone Leo's college tour, alone. I betrayed not only my sister, I betrayed myself. I kept hearing those words over and over. In the car, in the shower, lying awake in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I let it get this far. There was no excuse. No neat explanation that could undo what I'd done. What we'd done. And yet, every time I tried to bury it, push it down, pretend it didn't happen, his face would rise in my mind like a ghost. Those eyes. That night. The way he looked at me like I was something rare. But reality has a cruel way of breaking through fantasy. Especially when you're standing in a college campus parking lot, watching the boy who whispered I was beautiful smile at a girl his age with the same softness. It shouldn't have surprised me. He's young, handsome, full of life. And why wouldn't a girl his age be drawn to that? Why wouldn't he be drawn to her? She was bright-eyed, energetic, had that careless confidence only young women have, like the world hasn't bruised them yet. I watched him laugh at something she said. Watched her touch his arm. Watched him let her. And something in me snapped. Not in anger, but in shame. That ugly, twisting kind of shame that makes you want to disappear. I stood there, arms crossed, trying to keep my face still. Trying not to feel. But jealousy crept in anyway. And right behind it, disgust. At him. At myself. At everything we'd let happen. Was this all just a phase for him? A fantasy? A thrill? Did I mistake attention for affection? Did I just want to feel wanted one last time before the world stopped looking my way? I kept asking myself, what did I really want from him? Was it love? Or was it simply the illusion of love, wrapped in the warm glow of being seen, heard, desired? Because when you go long enough without being touched, even the wrong kind of attention feels like salvation. I thought about confessing, telling Diana, owning what I'd done. But how do you say something like that to your sister? How do you shatter someone's trust so completely and expect to survive it? How do you look your husband in the eye and tell him your loneliness led you to someone half your age, someone who calls you auntie, when other people are around? I kept going over it in my head, again and again. How I'd start, what I'd say. But I never got the chance. Because just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Diana found Leo's journal. What would you have done? Really? I want to know. Have you ever made a choice you knew was wrong? But in the moment, it felt right. So right. It silenced everything else, logic, guilt, reason, even love. Because that's what happened to me. And I've spent every day since, trying to make sense of it. Trying to understand how something so fleeting could cause a crack so deep. Not just in my marriage. Not just in my family. But inside me. So if you're still listening, please tell me what you think. Tell me if you've ever stood on a line, toes curled at the edge, heart screaming one thing while your conscience begs another. Leave your thoughts and advice in the comments. Someone out there might need to read your words more than you know. And if you don't want to miss our next tale of tangled hearts, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because these stories, they're not just mine. They're all of ours. Stories of love, regret, temptation, and truth. Narrator's voice, quiet now, somber,